And a very good morning to you. We're live from London. You're with Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. Coming up today, my guests will share their views on the week's biggest stories. Anna Cogan's here and Lynne O'Donnell's here too. Lynne, good morning. What have you spotted?
Hi, Emma. Well, I've spent the last week embedded in the ongoing horror of Afghanistan, and I've noticed between the lines that everybody wants to deport Afghans who we thought were our friends, but suddenly the Taliban are our friends.
Okay.
Hey-ho.
Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll also be heading to Ljubljana for the latest.
Slovenia's cycling supremacy and Montenegro's tourism troubles are among the burning topics in the Balkans. I'm Monocle's man in the region, Guy de Launey, and I'll be rounding up all the latest from my patch.
Plus, we'll hear from our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, who's on the line from Lisbon after a road trip. It's the 27th of July, 2025. Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday with Emma Nelson.
And a very good morning to you if you've just tuned in. It's Emma Nelson here, and joining me around the table, Lynne O'Donnell and Hannah Cogan. Hannah, first time on Monocle on Sunday. A very warm welcome. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you with us. How have our weeks been? I know that, Lynne, normally, dare I say it, when you come in, you're often sending a dispatch or sending a reportage from somewhere absolutely dastardly. It's kind of your beat. But I remember I said to you before we came on the programme, I said, where have you been anywhere dastardly recently? And you said, yes, a shopping centre in East London.
No offence to anyone who loves going to shopping centres in East London, of course. But it was on my way to the Victoria and Albert Museum Vaults, this newly opened place where you can go and look at all the stuff they have in their storehouses on display. And it was really quite sensational.
Brilliant. But the shopping centre not less so.
Yeah, always.
Okay. Fine. How about you, Hannah? How's your week been?
My week's been good. I have been glued to American media coverage, watching Donald Trump lose control of the news cycle, which I've enjoyed very much indeed, and got to contrast that a little bit yesterday by being part of an art installation at the National Gallery.
You were part of an art installation? Oh, there was a thing in Trafalgar Square, wasn't there?
There was a thing in Trafalgar Square yesterday, and Jeremy Deller, who's the artist who put it together, does these incredible physical installs as part of his work sometimes. And I got to be part of the team of people who dragged floats around for him and lifted up some really heavy stuff. And it was
Brilliant.
really fun.
And did you feel like you were art?
Maybe.
Okay. Lovely. Fine. Let's head to Lisbon to join our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé. Very good morning to you, Tyler. Are you feeling like a piece of art this morning?
Good morning. Bom dia, Emma.
dia.
No, I'm not feeling quite like a piece of art, but just, starting to bake in absolutely gorgeous skies. Amazing run of weather we've been having in Lisbon over the past week.
Now, anyone who's read your column this morning will know that you probably, I don't know, do you have creaky knees from a 3-day road trip?
No, I do not, and I think that is whether it's maybe because the brakes are rather light in the Suzuki Jimny. It could be that. Of course, our listeners will know I did the halfway mark check-in, or a little bit over the halfway mark check-in, with Georgina Godwin last Sunday, and then I was here about 10 hours later, here being Lisbon after driving from San Sebastian.
Okay, so this was an enormous road trip, wasn't it? This was a 2-nighter. 3-dayer. Talk us through it, because everybody loves a summer trip.
They do. Well, it's the original concept was it was going to be 2 nights, 3 days on the road. But as we decided, we looked at it and decided that actually it could probably be done in one. And I think part of it is you have to have at least a halfway point that you're excited about reaching. And you'll recall a few weeks ago we chatted from the streets of San Sebastian. I was staying in originally not a great hotel, but then we moved to a much better hotel called the Hotel Arbaso, and that was great. And I said, well, why don't we make this sort of the point that we have to hit? So it was about 14 hours from Zurich to San Sebastian. Arrived. It was just great to be back at a place that we knew reasonably well. There was someone there to take the car from us, and off we went into the evening and had great pinchos and very good wine from Galicia. And then we were back in the car, of course, talking to Georgina Godwin last of course was last Sunday. Went to an amazing grocery store called Lucas, Lukas for all of our listeners. Emma, we touched on this. It's just the type of place that you would really want at the end of your street. Probably replacing any number of the chain stores that we know we have in and around Marylebone. And then the car was just full of croquets and croquetas and wine, and off we went through the Basque region and then made our way across Castellón and Salamanca, and then across the border into Portugal. And 10 hours later, there we were in Lisbon.
Absolute bliss. I'm not entirely sure what the air conditioning's like when you fill a car full of croquetas, because a Jimmy doesn't have the most, dare I say, upmarket ventilation system.
Yeah, it's not bad. It was rather toasty when we were in Salamanca. Must have been close to 40, but actually it was fine. It did a good job. But I said the one thing it definitely does not have, it does not have aerodynamics, and that's part of it. This is, of course, one of these cars which was, of course, redesigned. This version probably about 7 or 8 years ago. It is it's all right angles, and on the rather sort of blustery plains of Spain, this thing was all over the bloody road. So it was sort of high risk when you wanted to pass a very large 18-wheeler. But anyway, nevertheless, we are here.
Delighted to hear it. Now, so we always like practical advice here. What's in the Brûlé travel kit for a long haul drive? Is there a full picnic? Are there sweets in the glove compartment? What do we take with? Do we have that sort of prickly heat talcum powder just in case? What is it that sort of gets you through it?
Well, there was a cooler. There's a small cooler. We're talking about a soft cooler, though, which actually worked remarkably well, because I have to say you're rather spoiled in the new Toyota Land Cruiser, which has its own refrigerator in the vehicle. This is a rather sort of more down market version, but it worked. Listen, nothing super fancy. Good iced tea from Switzerland. A bit of sparkling water. But listen, I'm into a roadside stop, and this was one of the other findings from the journey. As I was saying, you go through. Okay, think about Spain. Spain is known for big muscular retail. You've got the likes. This is the home of Mercadona, of course, one of Europe's most successful grocery store groups. It's home of El Corte Inglés. It is home to the Ortega family and Inditex and Massimo Dutti and all of the brands that they own. It's also home to Repsol, of course, one of the biggest energy companies in Europe. But they are not able to put together a really outstanding roadside experience. But the French are no better. And again, home to some of the world's biggest luxury brands, also some of the world's biggest retailers, also home to Total Energy. Same thing. I mean, there's nowhere that you think, oh my God, they've nailed it. There's great regional produce. There's sparkling bathrooms. Everything smells good. No, forget it. We tried about probably 6 or 7 stops along the way, and nothing to recommend. Okay,
so the cooler is going to have to step up. I'm off to the west coast of France today to go and have a look at the Atlantic, and we were hoping to do a bit of driving. I think you've just sort of possibly dissuaded us. I think we'll just get to the Bordeaux vineyards and stagger no further.
But I was going to say, but it is great. Listen, a road trip is great, and I'm absolutely thrilled that we did it. And of course, you're flying back and forth all the time, and it just it does open your eyes to a variety of different things, and of course you see places along the way. I mean, particularly, to me actually just the Basque country just was really, really outstanding. You want to go back, and you just sort of venture 10 kilometers beyond San Sebastian. Think, okay, would love to stop here, need to return here, and likewise also I think coming in down through the north of Portugal and crossing into Lisbon again, just spotted so many, and going back to vineyards, so many beautiful wineries, which also need a visit, probably with a larger vehicle in a Jimny.
Indeed, the Land Cruiser and the Jimmy are coming. The Jimmy can be the backup van.
Exactly.
Lynne, well, let's bring in our guests, because they do pretty good road trips as well. Lynne, you did a completely mad one across Australia.
I did. I flew London to Perth, hired a car and drove to Melbourne. 10,000 Ks. It took me 2 weeks, and I did not have a car with a fridge.
How do I ask, how did you do what? Okay, it's a very simple question. Why did you do that?
Oh, because, I've lived outside of Australia for a long time, and I don't feel like I've seen enough of the country. And I can tell you that it is vaster than you can possibly get your head around. But also, I wasn't bored for 1 second. You are driving along at 100 miles an hour on the straightest, emptiest road through the Nullarbor Desert, and I was not bored or less than utterly fascinated with the landscape for 1 minute. Okay. It was just sensational.
Tyler, would you do 10,000 miles across Australia in the Suzuki Jimmy?
Hey, listen, I grew up in Canada, so
exactly. Yeah.
On behalf of Canadians everywhere.
I've done quite a few road trips, Winnipeg to Ottawa. Not quite the same as maybe Perth to Melbourne. Not in a Jimny. They don't sell the Jimny in Canada, but I can remember doing it in my parents' Cherokee Chief, which had Levi's denim interior.
Oh my God,
this is early 80s.
A girl can dream. This is amazing. What's it like sitting on someone's jeans all day? That must be weird. That must be a little bit strange.
Yeah, we sort of think that the collaboration, that the co-branded is something of just the last sort of decade or 15 years of marketing. But I can remember this was a time when the Cherokee was made by AMC, was the automaker at the time, and it had a red Levi's patch, very discreet, but I think it was on the side of either front door, sort of. I think it was lower right, if I recall. And obviously these these weren't pure cotton. I would say that this was modified denim, but it had of course the proper copper buttons as well for the upholstery in the car. I mean, what would that vehicle be worth? Minted and brand new today, not brand new, but lovingly restored. I mean, you'd probably sell for millions in Japan.
Unbelievable. Thinking of all the rivets and the copper things, that might be a little bit uncomfortable. Hannah, you haven't done road trips, but you've done a bus trip with a chicken.
I've done a bus trip with a chicken. Like Tyler, I grew up in Canada, so my capacity to sit in the back of my parents' car and be bored in a time before the internet is absolutely sensational. But some of the best road trips I've done are around Latin America. If you want to get around Latin America, the best way to travel is by bus. And you will intersperse the boredom by being absolutely terrified for your life, doing 100 kilometers an hour down tiny mountain roads that a 50-seater bus should not be doing hairpin turns on. Usually sat next to a chicken. Once I was sat next to a goat. You usually make some friends along the way.
Tyler, are we signing up for that, for the road trip with the goat? Maybe not in the car.
Road trip with a goat. Yeah, a road trip with goat in bus. But listen, small goat in the back of a Jimny, I'm game.
I'm not sure we shouldn't actually need to get you a trailer now. So we've got the Land Cruiser, we've got the Jimny with the wine, and then we have the goat at the back. We've got a full sort of caravan entourage going on now.
Yeah, we do. But can someone answer this question for me? What are the Dutch towing? Aside from that, they've all got camper vans. But then if the Dutch don't have a camper van on the back of their vehicle, then they've got a trailer. And I'm not sure what they're towing all over Europe. But some of them need their licenses removed.
Tomatoes, tulips,
and
cheese.
Also Belgians as well. They love a trailer.
I was in the south of England last weekend at a wedding, and everybody had one of those big camper vans on their front drive, and it was astonishing. I mean, well, we drove past a shop that sells these things. These things are like £500,000 when you really get going in them. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how wise an investment is, because none of them seem to be going anywhere.
No, exactly. No, it is. I think there's a whole book to be done. It wouldn't be sort of very politically with the times, but it is amazing when you look at license plates and much is revealed. And one of the fascinating things as well, in Portugal, if you look at road death rates, they're they're certainly amongst the highest in all of Western Europe anyway. And you can see why. I mean, it's an absolute free-for-all in Portugal. I mean, passing on all sides, etc. And yeah, it's no surprise when you sort of look at the grim statistics as well. So beware of also P plates too.
And beware if there's a Suzuki Jimny, a Land Cruiser, and a goat heading towards you, trying to overtake the 18-wheeler. Tyler, I know there's a destination you want to talk about here. We're all basically going to head to... I'm going to the wrong bit of France today. I'm going to the West Coast. I should really be heading back down to the Côte d'Azur.
Yes, there is a very, very good story this weekend, listeners, in M. Le Monde. So this is the weekend supplement of Le Monde, which they need to distribute. It needs to be much broader distribution because you only get it within metropolitan France. And I've been lobbying Le Monde to say, listen, even like Basel. I mean, you would think that the newspaper, it's literally, you can drive, to Mulhouse. I mean, you can drive across the border, 3 kilometers from Basel, cross the border, and you can get a copy of the weekend supplement. But go to the train station in Basel, go to the train station in Zurich, which is only 45 minutes away, and they don't send the supplement. Anyway, there is a fantastic reportage, great story. It takes us just a little bit west of Cannes to the most amazing enclave across 20 plus hectares, built in the late 1960s. And the story, it just talks about this community, which has really sort of flown under the radar for, obviously the better part of five decades plus at this point. And it just, Emma, you probably didn't have a moment to read it because it is rather long, but just beautiful pictures about this amazing community and all of the, also crazy characters that live there. But it just talks about this place, which is, part kibbutz, part gated community, and just sounds kind of mad. And it's just, so I think one thing is it's just very evocative, of course, of the types of places that we think about along the Med, the characters that might live there. But it's a great piece of journalism as well.
It is
wonderful, sort of just offbeat, great photography, and not a send up as well, because of course you could make fun of these places and say it's the enclave of the rich and famous as well. But it talks about even how during the community meeting of the condominium group that there's simul translation for all of the English speakers or those who don't speak French who are in the community as well. It's well observed without being snide, and it's as I said, just good reportage in a supplement during summertime. It's exactly what you want.
It's also a really good article about a really interesting place that I think so many of us may have missed, not least because it's called Port La Galère, and it's sort of built from the 1960s into the rock. So it has it's described as a sort of troglodyte community. But if you imagine that your troglodyte community incorporates the founder of La Brioche Dorée bakery chain, I mean, it's kind of that kind of standard. What I found interesting about it is the community aspect of it, which in a world where we are now gating ourselves off so that we don't have to interact with each other, and the concept of high luxury now is in fact your privacy and your own time to yourself, what they do is they have a buffet. And they have the sort of communal series. You don't have your own, you're not allowed your own swimming pool. You have to swim with the neighbours as well. And I quite enjoyed that idea of everybody having to muck in, Tyler.
Now, this is the great piece, and if you get towards the end of it as well, it talks about also, despite everyone sort of being, of course, equal but wealthy, because they were talking that these that to have an apartment there or a small townhouse, it's about they're going for about 10,000 euros per square meter, so not inexpensive, but exactly, it was saying that the part that was built in the 1980s, it was saying that many residents, not all, sort of look down on the people who are actually. So even though we're all equal, if you're if you bought something from sort of around circa 1985, you're maybe at the wrong end of the compound. But that aside, yes, there are 2 restaurants. There are, of course, 2 bathing platforms where you're just jumping straight into the med. There are swimming pools or tennis courts. So when it gets warmer, there's just there's golf buggies, which of course are picking people up. It sounds like you're not allowed to drive your own golf buggy. So again, there's a sort of level of being a little bit, Frenchy socialist, but of course with a good splash of champagne. But here's the best bit, Emma. This is sort of almost buried in the third to last paragraph. It talked about the mini nightclub as well. Yes. So there is also a mini dance floor at this place. I will see you there.
Absolutely. And we'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your day in Lisbon. Thank you so much, our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé. Have a good day. At 9:20 here in London, 9:20 here in Lisbon as well. Mini nightclubs. How are we feeling about mini nightclubs? Not big ones. Hannah's well on this.
I have a theory that the best nights out are in small pubs with dance floors at the back. So if you are in a small town or wherever everyone is on a Saturday night, if that dance floor is tiny and mostly exists through an act of willpower as opposed to being a designated space, those are always the best nights out.
It's the creation of the impromptu dance floor.
Exactly.
The moves of chairs, which have been long replaced by pool tables.
Yes, is precisely. But if you can find one of those and you have the right mix of people, best nights out.
You sound like you're talking from experience here, Hannah.
I went to university in Ireland and travelled a lot in Ireland when I was a student. So a lot of my best nights out were pubs, working men's clubs in rural Ireland, and they have never been topped by any super club or film premiere or flash night out.
Excellent.
The most fun I've ever had.
The most genuine, probably arguably quite a warm evening as well. Would be had quite a friendly evening.
Evening, night, next morning, lunchtime.
Good. We're all going out with Hannah. How about you? Because having travelled the world, and you've probably been to places where dancing's actually pretty much frowned upon, but the capacity for impromptu joy in a slightly public space.
Oh, I think Hannah's description of the impromptu dance floor, nobody's judging you either, because by the time you get up there, everybody's already having a great time, and that's what it should be all about. But I went to the bigger clubs when I was a kid growing up in Melbourne. I went to nightclubs in Melbourne, and mostly live music. It was live music, a very healthy scene when I was growing up in Melbourne.
Who does do the best nightclubs? Clearly, the tiny community, the mini nightclub in Port La Galère is something that we're all going to try and gate crash. They probably recognise you from. You wouldn't be one of the people from the compound. But who does a good nightclub, a good night out? I mean, I'm a Mancunian. I went to the Hacienda, so I win everything automatically. But that doesn't exist anymore. So who does do the good? Who cuts a rug well? Hannah.
Ooh, I spend a lot of time in Montreal, and Montreal has phenomenal nightlife. And it's a shame Tyler has gone back to his breakfast in Lisbon, because he might be able to cast some light on this. But Montreal does a pretty good night out now as well, in a very relaxed, low-key kind of a way. Mm-hmm. And I will say Dublin. Dublin does a great night out. How
about you, Lynne? Who cuts a good rug for you?
I can't remember the last time I went to a nightclub, to be honest with you. But I have had good nights out. Even in Kabul, it was a big party town before the Taliban came back. Some of the best parties I've ever been to, I went to in Kabul.
What's it like?
It was real fin de siecle. So, everybody knew that they were dancing on the head of a pin. And so a lot of music, spontaneous performances, dancing. Yeah, it was, and a lot of everything else, to be honest with you.
Everybody could get up, pile in, do what they, just
if you knew the right person and you went to the right party, for sure.
That's a good sign.
But that's all over. Oh, you're probably still going on in the whatever underground is allowed to exist. But also in Tehran, I went to one of the most drunken evenings of my life in Tehran, just before the first invasion of, the 2003 invasion of Iraq, because I went there on my way in to cross the border. And I tell you what, I walked into the kitchen at 4:00 in the morning, and there was a guy there making a jug of vodka cocktails. And the cocktail was a bottle of vodka in each hand, it being emptied into the jug. That was the cocktail at 4 a.m. And it was just like, whoa, these people, know how to party.
But that lovely feeling that what you've just described, you've been dancing in Kabul, you've had a drunken cocktail at 4 a.m. in Tehran. That fact is, these are now two places which are not associated with anything as remotely free as that.
No, but I bet it still goes on because people like to party. It's the human condition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what we spotted in the papers this morning. Lynne, should we continue with the theme of Afghanistan, but a much more serious view on it, if you want?
Well, as you know, here in the UK, there's been a week or 10 days of stories about the leak of basically a data dump a couple of years ago by the military. And the data was mostly related to Afghan people who had worked with the foreign governments and military as interpreters or alongside them as special forces or whatever. And there has been a lot of argy-bargy in the reporting here about how the big issue is a super injunction and about how the media wasn't allowed to report it. But for me, that misses the real, the fundamental issue of how the Taliban was really able to access information about its perceived enemies. And its perceived enemies are anyone who was not pro-Taliban for the 20 years of the civil war. Now, the Interior Ministry, the Defence Ministry, everywhere, they were just abandoned. The last government just got up and left, and they left all this information behind. And the Taliban have been running death squads for 4 years, hunting these people down and killing them. And now Pakistan is sending people back over the border. Iran is sending people back over the border. And the Taliban are identifying former military and police and government workers and hunting them down and killing them. So, there's a lot of denial about the role of the Western powers in the vulnerability of people who were left behind.
We've seen stories today coming out about a record number of Afghans have been sent back to Afghanistan from Iran, most of them against their will. And that inability, Hannah, to try to... the Western world has just stepped back and nothing seems to be able to be done.
And it does seem slightly like we don't get a lot of coverage of Afghanistan anymore, which I think is interesting as well. It does feel like something that we've all kind of collectively moved on from or left behind. There doesn't seem to be a lot of investing in that kind of in-depth reporting about the ongoing situation in Afghanistan. And I wonder if some of it is just a little bit out of sight, out of mind to a certain extent. It just seems like something that is getting pushed aside.
Is that because it's just so hard to report from Afghanistan now?
Well, yeah, Afghanistan has become a black hole. It's closed down. The Taliban are working very closely with China to learn how to control media access, or media generally, access to outside information. And there are no foreign correspondents in there, and Afghan media organisations have essentially become propaganda outlets for the Taliban. But aside from that, we are all so consumed by the problems that are domestic issues. And if you look at, look at the coverage of politics in both DC, let's say in America, and here in the UK, there is a cohort of correspondents who cover politics for the sake of politics, and they're married to each other. They, their kids go to the same schools. They go on the same school run. They're divorced from each other. It's a very, very closed shop. I mean, even here in the UK, you don't hear about or read about very often poverty in the north, or problems of what's happening outside of the London Westminster bubble. And I think also the total denigration over the past decade or so of journalism. I mean, as journalists, Hannah, you are also an investigative journalist. You can't afford to do long, in-depth stuff because it doesn't matter whether you spend 2 months or 2 hours on a story, you're still only going to get $500 for it. It's just like, and we've got to eat.
Yeah, It's interesting. So I work in sort of slightly longer form stuff generally. So I'm usually working on films that take something like 6 months, a year, sometimes 2 years to come into fruition, which on the one hand insulates us from this a little bit because the nature of the medium is that it is a long-term reporting format. On the other hand, they are expensive to produce. They require a lot of time and a lot of money. And we are seeing that dry up a little bit, which I think is deleterious in as much as the formats that I work in are the things that are really good at. We're going to go and sit in an Afghan women's media collective, like Ljubljana, for instance, for a year. We can do that kind of reporting. And I think when we see that start to dry up as well, that context and that explaining really is a problem.
There is that investment, isn't it? And like you say, it's the expense. But also, if you get halfway through the project and what you were expecting, what you had pitched literally does not happen, then you find yourself with an awful lot of footage and not much to do.
Yeah, and it's not a fun place to be in, sitting in an edit and realising, oh dear Lord, this is not quite worked out the way we wanted to. Now, that being said, at least we get the benefit of incentivizing all of that investment up front. So the film's going to get made. It might not be the film that everyone thought was going to get made, so at least we don't get trashed in the same way or spiked in the same way that a written report would. But I think we are losing patience and investment for that kind of contextual reporting, which is really important. Not just those drip-fed headline, what can grab your attention today, but how something is grinding out over a period of 3 or 4 years. And investing in that kind of reporting is a really important thing to do.
You're listening to Monocle on Sunday. Let's head now to Ljubljana to join our Balkans correspondent, Guy de Launey. Good morning, Guy.
Good morning, Emma, and good morning all.
How's it going where you are?
We've got it nice and cool, you'll be pleased to hear. Absolutely thrilled, I'm sure. But, I mean, my goodness, when I look around the region and we've got temperatures of 42 degrees in Belgrade, Skopje, Tirana, I'm rather enjoying the rain in Ljubljana. It's lovely.
Indeed. And people are absolutely boiling in other parts of it. I think this is now being classified as Europe's third heat wave of the summer.
Yeah, and it's been relentless. I know I've just said there's been rain, so obviously there's been some let up in various parts of the summer so far. But it really starts dragging you down. And, I always say about London, the problem with London is it's not really set up for the hot weather. But a lot of places around this region aren't either. Aircon is not as common as you'd think it is. And in terms of getting the infrastructure in place for things like, more trees in the cities, more water features, more drinking fountains, cities are playing catch up at the moment, and it's an issue on the coast as well. I mean, I just don't bother with the coastline in July and August because it's utterly unpleasant. Even though you've got the Adriatic Sea there, that itself gets up to about 30 degrees these days.
Goodness me, you've just put off all the tourists. I think you may just have ruined the region's tourism infrastructure there. We'll come to that in a minute, but everybody's going to be stuck inside today watching the television.
I suspect they will, although I also suspect a fair part of Slovenia's population will actually be in Paris today for the final stage of the Tour de France, because those who do not follow cycling or even the world's greatest cycling race may not be aware that the greatest male cyclist in the world at the moment and for the past few years is a Slovenian by the name of Tadej Pogačar. And he is utterly incredible. Whatever he goes in for, he wins. Not just the Tour de France, but one-day races, the Giro d'Italia. He's the reigning world champion. It's utterly filthy, frankly, what he does on a bicycle.
He also only looks about 10.
Oh, yeah, this is it. And he's 26, actually. But he's been winning the Tour de France since he's 21. Which is absolutely ludicrous, because peak age for a cyclist is meant to be late 20s, early 30s. He's 26 years old, and today, barring something absolutely extraordinary happening, like Godzilla appearing on Montmartre in Paris, he is going to win his 4th Tour de France by the age of 26. It'll be his 104th professional bike race victory. And he's simply the greatest I've ever seen in my lifetime. Eddy Merckx, the great Belgian, the legend, who is considered by many to be, many who've never even seen him race, to be the greatest of all time, says of all the riders he's ever seen, Pogačar is the one who reminds him most of himself. So you couldn't get a greater endorsement than that. And of course, Slovenians are just massively proud of this. And you see them turning out on the roads of France, all the mountains, the towns, the Slovenian flags are everywhere. Other people here, as you say, are just sitting in and watching the Tour de France, which is a very good thing to do when it's stupidly hot in the afternoons. And it's having a big impact on the country as well. I mean, Slovenia's literally been put on the map by not just Tadej Pogačar, but the country's other great cyclists, Primož Roglič and Matej Mohoric.
How much has it really been put on the map? Because there's a couple of people shaking their heads in this room, and they're journalists. So I mean, Hannah's is literally. So we Guy, we need to sort of like let you know we've got Hannah Cogan and Lynne O'Donnell in the studio with us, two very well respected, very bright and inquisitive journalists, and Hannah's just like lifted her hands in sort of complete disbelief, like never heard of him. This is a problem. Okay. So Guy, help these poor women out, please. Would you mind?
So I am not just making this up. Yesterday I had a chat with the global communications director for the Slovenian Tourist Board, Masha, with a surname I've forgotten for the moment, but Masha is extremely lovely. And I was asking about this. Can you put a number on it? And she said actually that cycling and cycling tourism is perhaps the main product that Slovenia is offering in terms of its tourism. Because if you look at this country, we've got mountains, we've got lakes, we've got Alps, we've got 60% of the country covered by forest, and we've got lots and lots of very cyclable roads, plus off-road trails and easy paved trails as well, which again, traffic-free. And this is becoming a major part of the tourism offer. And I asked Masha very specifically, what's it mean for Tadej Pogačar to be doing what he's doing in the Tour de France and other races? And she says, when you got that exposure every day that you see the Slovenian flag next to his name on his team kit, that he's an ambassador for Slovenian tourism, literally, there's a contract there. She reckons the exposure is worth hundreds of millions of euros in promotion for the country.
I'm not sure that Lynne O'Donnell will be jumping onto a bike, given the expression she just given. But Hannah, you seem pretty up for it and chirpy. Okay. Sorry, Guy.
I mean, and I love sport. I really do. I play it, I watch it, and I'll be honest, cycling has never spoken to me. But I might give it a try. Mountains sound great. Trails sound great. It sounds like a beautiful country. I could be tempted.
I will give you absolute 10 out of 10 for effort, Guy. What else?
Bless you.
What else have you spotted in the news for us?
So, I mean, we're talking about travel. I think one of the things I keep seeing and also hearing as well, because, I mean, this is again a thing. If we're journalists on the ground, not just, reading stories in the paper or talking to officials who want to pump up their figures, not that I'm casting any aspersions on what Masha told me yesterday, but if we're actually talking about how things feel, Croatia and Montenegro are starting to run into trouble with their tourism. And this is a big deal because both those countries, they really rely on tourism for a great big chunk of their GDP. We're talking more than a fifth of the GDP of those countries in both cases. And the issue that they're both running into is one of price versus quality. Now, the price has gone up very significantly in both those places in the past few years. We're talking about rises over the past few years of 50% in some cases. But the quality hasn't been matching those price rises. And the visitor number arrivals had been going up. Now, what I'm hearing and also seeing to some extent in the figures this year are the figures are significantly down in terms of arrivals. I was just talking to somebody the other day in Ljubljana, in the tea shop of all places, but she just got back from the Croatian coast in Istria and said, it's empty. The people just aren't there at the moment. And she goes every year to the same place. This year, the people aren't there. Montenegro, again, people reporting that they're not seeing the numbers that they used to do on the beach resorts like Budva and Herceg Novi. They're just not got those numbers there. And the constant complaint is we're charging top dollar, but we're not providing the top quality that the tourists are looking for.
And this is a real shame because I remember conversations that we've had over the past few years about how Croatia didn't kind of know what to do with the numbers of the people and it didn't have enough staff, and Montenegro had the same thing. Yep. But talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago, they just came back from Montenegro and they said exactly the same thing. They had this wonderful sort of trip of a lovely European holiday being sold to them, and when they got there, it just was grim.
Yeah, and This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, I grew up next to the sea. So I'm from Liverpool, and I grew up in the northern suburbs of Liverpool, right next to the sea, although it was the Seaforth container base was my local bit of sea.
Not exactly a hot beach.
We had the sand dunes as well, and now there's an Anthony Gormley installation along the beach there between Seaforth and Crosby and North Liverpool. And if you go down there, it's a perfectly lovely place to spend the day, have a walk, have a cup of tea or coffee, have a big game of beach football or cricket. But your expectations are pretty low because you're not paying much for it, and it's a neighbourhood beach. And there's lots of very lovely neighbourhood beaches the place that I tend to go to is Kvarner Bay in Croatia, which are the sort of towns around Rijeka, which is the third city of Croatia. And things there, they're very sort of neighbourhoody and low-key. They've managed to keep their prices not stratospheric, and the crowds don't go there. What we found is you get further down the coast in Istria and Dalmatia, you're getting the same sort of beaches, but a much more expensive experience. And you get these reports of people being charged €200 for a beach umbrella and a bed for the day in some parts of Montenegro, which is absolutely extraordinary. And they have got the same rocky bits of coast as everywhere else down this side of the Adriatic. And for Brits in particular, we like our sand, don't we? The rocky and concrete beaches, they're straight away they're a compromise, even though the water is absolutely spectacular and beautiful. It is a compromise for us to not have our toes in the sand. So if you're getting charged £200 for a set of beach lounges and umbrellas for the day, and you're getting that, probably not. And people are more and more, of course, heading to Albania. That's the hype of the moment, which I think you're going to find again. The quality of the service isn't super duper, but the prices at the moment, are staying fairly low.
Okay, let's move slightly away from tourism. Actually, no, let's keep with tourism-ish. Let's keep with travel, shall we?
Yeah.
The opening or the reopening of an amazing tunnel. And don't we love a train and an enormous alpine tunnel project here at Monocle?
I thought you'd go for it, Emma. I mean, it's got to be done, hasn't it? It's a thrill. So this is the Tauern Tunnel, which goes through the Alps between Central Europe and my bit of Europe, and it's been closed for more than 2 years. There was a landslide, as I remember, and that closed the tunnel. And when I was looking for direct trains between here and Munich for the past couple of years, there weren't any. Because you couldn't get through the tunnel, so you had to have little workarounds. And, I was thinking, do a nice little day trip to Salzburg. No, you won't, mate. It's not happening. But they're back as of, I think it was the 14th of July they reopened. So you've now got these lovely direct rail connections, which run, as I say, all the way from Central Europe. I think the furthest we can go from Slovenia is probably Stuttgart, I think, is the furthest we can go. But I've certainly ridden on the Blaue Enzian from Munich to Ljubljana, and that is one you can do at night, but you really should do in the day, because you'll get all this spectacular alpine scenery. You'll go through Salzburg. I mean, you can get off in Salzburg and, see, all the Mozart sites and all the rest of it. But it's a really, really super lovely ride. And, of course, you're linking all these cities in a way that is just far more civilised than any other way of travelling between them.
It is absolutely lovely, although we have just been singing the praise of the road trip a little earlier on today's programme.
No!
Sorry.
No, stop it.
No, I won't. But the glory is what you just talked about there is the way that you just get that. You can go from Austria to the Adriatic without blinking, and it is just that. It's just super intelligent and literally super easy, and you don't have to talk about stop-off points on at roadside cafes and their various qualities.
I mean, the one thing you do have to do is you need to be aware of what the catering facilities are on these various trains, and because some of them ain't got any at all. So the kiosk at the railway station is an absolutely imperative stop off unless you want to be very thirsty and very hungry on some of these trips. But there's always the currywurst, of course. I mean, if you're going. When you pull out from Munich on the Blaue Enzian, I can guarantee you that for at least the first couple of hours of your trip, there will be currywurst and chips available. But why you'd want to go for that is another question.
Well, why anybody? Imagine if you've got a 10-hour train journey and someone's just sat there and is currently digesting a currywurst. I'm not entirely sure what. I know how I'd be feeling. Just don't do it. Nothing spicy on trains.
Especially in a closed compartment.
Indeed. Although Hannah has spoken about sitting next to a goat on a bus ride in South America in the last few years, so I don't know what's worse. Guy de Launey and Ljubljana, thank you so much for joining us on the line. Huge nods of approval for currywurst on trains, Lynne.
Oh, no, disapproval.
But the thought of the big long train journey across Europe is rather enticing.
Well, trains across Europe are very efficient and clean and fast. So, yeah, and I'm a big fan of the Eurostar. I've been to a few places on that. But, yeah, I think you've got to choose the sort of holiday that you want to have. You can stop your car anywhere. If you're on a 10-hour or 10-week journey across somewhere, you can stop, you can camp, you can buy, you can food, you can, And I must say, following on from the criticism of the roadside stops in Portugal and elsewhere, that in Italy the roadside stops offer a fabulous selection of food from memory.
There's a sort of a national pastime, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The Italians go on their road trips, and there's a sign that you're on holidays. You've stopped off for a pizza on the roadside.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some good ones in Canada as well if you're looking at roadside stops. If you ever have driven up the West Coast, which is a road trip that everyone should do at some point in their life, up through British Columbia, through the Rockies, and then up into Alaska, there is exactly one gas station about halfway up British Columbia, and it is where you will run out of gas. There are not an outstanding selection of snacks, a lot of beef jerky, but also they will sell you in that gas station a cinnamon roll that is about the size of your head. And it is the best thing I have ever eaten.
And everybody falls asleep at the wheel. Hannah, let's move back to some of the stories that we've been looking at today. You wanted to talk about the fact that Congress has broken up for the summer, but not because it's summertime, but because Jeffrey Epstein is sort of a big grey cloud over the White House.
A great big grey cloud. And we, as you say, Congress has broken up early. Everyone's gone home early. Because we didn't want to force any more votes about whether or not we were going to disclose more information, what we were going to direct the Justice Department to do. And it's really fascinating to watch the Republican Party, and also separate to that, the White House, not really know how to handle this story. It's sort of the first time we've really seen Donald Trump lose control of the news cycle. And it's fascinating.
Indeed. I mean, if you look at the New York Times this morning, just that idea of Donald Trump trying to wrestle back of the control of the news cycle. In the front page of the New York Times is competing conspiracy theories consume Trump's Washington. President Trump is trying to divert attention from the Epstein conspiracy theory with a new and improved one about Barack Obama and treason. And it has a look. If you're a Trump supporter, then obviously this still feeds into he's a president who has had. He's more sinned against than sinning. But you, Lynne, wanted to raise a point when we were talking about this beforehand, that Trump has broken the law. He has convictions. He was impeached twice, wasn't he? But
he's a felon.
This is a line about underage victims, and that's when this could turn America.
I think it's quite fascinating that almost every day now we're seeing new photographs of him with Epstein, with Ghislaine Maxwell, with Prince Andrew, and with young girls at parties or whatever. And this is back in the day, if it was in the era of, everyone's got a camera in their pocket, we would be flooded with these. People must have them in their in their basements or in boxes in the cupboards that they're bringing out. And I have a friend who works for the New York Post's Page 6. Her name is Nikki Gostin, and she has a very fantastic, actually, Instagram account where it's often Italian 1970s cabaret acts and stuff like that. But she, every now and then, comes out with some really caustic stuff. And this morning there is a photograph of Donald Trump when he was hanging around with Miss Universe, Miss Teen Universe competitions with a very, very young girl. She looks preteen, and he's kissing her on the lips. I don't think we should or could now be in any doubt about his predilections and his friendship, no matter how much he's trying to divert attention. And I think what we were talking about before, Hannah, is basically that he has crossed a line and sunk so low in the view of his MAGA support base, and we're seeing the level of decency that they will, or indecency, if you like, that they will not tolerate. And I think that's a good thing.
Has Trump lost the room?
I think he has. Yeah. I think it's worth just picking up on what Lynne was saying there. There is a paranoia to American politics, and there always have been, and there always has been, rather. And pedophilia is a really specific one. We all remember Pizzagate from a couple of years ago. There's something about that as part of the great conspiracy theory that really does resonate with Americans and American voters. And one of the things that's been fascinating about this is remembering that Donald Trump brought this up, right? It was his decision to bring this into the news cycle, and promised a list and promised a client book and things like that, and promised that to an electorate who were assuming that there would be Democratic politicians and Hollywood celebrities on that list, because that is what Donald Trump promised his voters. And it turns out that list doesn't exist. And having raised all of that interest and raised all of that suspicion, he now doesn't have anything to feed his voter base.
What is it, do we think, that's made him do that? If as is emerging now, there is plenty of evidence to suggest that Donald Trump was in certain places at certain times?
I think what is interesting about how badly Donald Trump has read the room on this is that, for lack of a better way of expressing this, he's revealed his age a little bit. This is very much an online conspiracy theory, and it is very much something that has spread in chat rooms and on podcasts. And it's fundamentally spreading through channels that Donald Trump himself does not consume and does not understand.
Let's bring in the death of Hulk Hogan in as this week as well. I mean, we're going to steer clear of various sort of political and difficult stories that he was involved in. But the fact remains is that Hulk Hogan, to many, was a figure from the 1980s until he suddenly became an enormous part of the Donald Trump communications machine.
Absolutely. And he is also very much the poster child for your Obama-Trump swing voters, which are a really significant section of American politics, right? He was one of Obama's biggest cheerleaders. He bought into that message that we were going to champion the little guy, and then he felt disillusioned and swung to voting for Donald Trump. And I think he very much became the voice of those kind of populist concerns that we're seeing picked up again now in these Epstein files as part of a set of concerns that have been avoided by politicians, and now Donald Trump is seeing to be avoiding as well, which is where his base, it turns out, kind of smell blood. Turns out their support is much more conditional than we previously thought.
Lynne, let's move to Bitcoin. You wanted to draw our attention to a story about that.
Did I?
Yes.
I think, Bitcoin...
Would you like me to remind you what it was?
Yes, thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, we get sent a list before we go on air. You may sometimes feel as if we're making this stuff up as we're going along, but actually there's a master plan. And our producer, Mariella Vadvan, is absolutely instrumental in making sure that we know what we're talking about. Today we are sort of winging it a bit, but I think you wanted to talk about Bitcoin.
Well, I see Bitcoin really as an extension of what we've just been talking about, where Donald Trump will go. Where is he not afraid to step? And Bitcoin has been yet another, the guy's got, doesn't he have a perfume now, a watch, a Bible, a
Sneakers.
Gold bar? Yeah, that's right, the $300 Trump Yeezys.
You can put your feet in Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly. We can call them the treesies, or the sleazy treesies. He's also become a Bitcoin promoter. It seems to me that anything that he thinks that he can make money out of, he will try to, and he's got his son Eric in on it as well. But Bitcoin is a very specific thing. It's nothing. It's ephemera, like the NFTs. There's a certain set number of Bitcoins that will ever be produced, apparently. We're talking, 21 million, 27 million. And they are just a vehicle for making money for non-transparent black economy transactions. And I saw something, a video by a left of centre media organisation that does investigative stuff in the United States, that is going to small rural communities in Texas where these Bitcoin factories, if you like, are being built. And they run 24/7 at extremely high noise levels. You've got this vibrating factory 24/7 over your back fence that is using enormous amounts of electricity and to keep running and water to stay cool, and is basically affecting the mental and physical health of people in these communities without any accountability. It seems to me that at every level it is a bad and damaging thing.
It sort of goes back to, when steel was mass produced and coal was mass produced. It's that idea that a community sort of buckles under the economic needs of a community. And indeed
those
of
communities
companies
were created around the production of steel, for instance. So people were invested in it, got jobs out of it and lived alongside it, and it stopped at night. And that's not the case here.
And certainly you're not seeing those communities all going to work in the Bitcoin factory, are you? I mean, they're not the ones making money out of this.
They don't employ people.
They don't employ people. And Donald Trump is. His family are, particularly his sons. Don Jr. and Eric Trump are both very heavily invested in American Bitcoin, which is a mining operation. And we've seen Donald Trump this week pass the Genius Act because he loves self-deprecation, and also throw the Clarity Act to the Senate. So we're also talking about major overhauls in how they're regulated. We're creating more and more loopholes. And he's going to make himself rich off it.
You're listening to Monocles on Sunday. We have 2.5 minutes left of the programme, and I know, Hannah, that you wanted to turn this into book corner. We've talked an awful lot about travel today, on trains, in cars, not much aviation today, but the joy of a brilliant new book that we should all be reading.
Absolutely. Whilst we're talking about Paris and things that you could do in Paris and in things that are connected to Paris.
And you're off to Paris in a couple of weeks, aren't you?
No, a couple of days.
Couple of days. Okay, Lynne, get your pen and paper ready, because we're all. I'm going away today to France. I need a book.
I have a recommendation for a book that you should order immediately. It's by Thomas Schlesser, who's a French art historian. He has written some fantastic books on politics in 19th and 20th century art, but he has also just written a fiction book, which is called Mona's Eyes. It is about a little girl who is losing her sight. She has 52 weeks until her sight is lost. So every week she and her grandfather go and look at one specific painting before she loses her sight. It was the best book I read last year in French, and it is just about to be released in English. And I cannot recommend it highly enough if you love art and if you love culture and you want to hear a historian write in novelized form. It is absolutely incredible.
Lynne, are we getting that?
Yeah, well, I'm going to pin Hannah's ears back after the show because, that sounds like the perfect summer read.
And also, if you're going to be in Paris, where is this set, Hannah?
So this is set in Paris. This is set in and around Paris. And if you are also in Paris, there's something you should go and look at if you're also a magazine enthusiast. Ramdan Touhani, who's a French entrepreneur, has a fantastic shop in the 3rd arrondissement, and he has opened up his incredible archive of political magazines, which I would enthusiastically recommend.
And with Mona's Eyes, could Lynne actually do the book? Could she go from place to place and
absolutely
do whatever?
You could. And as I say, Thomas Schlesser is an art historian, so it's an incredible sort of blending of art history and beautiful fictionalization and an ode to why we love art and why we love to look at art, and it's just superb.
And that we do in conjunction with the Radical Media Archive that you're telling us about. Where is that again? What does it do?
It's in the 3rd arrondissement. It is in Ramdan Touhani's store seems like the wrong word. Let's call it a platform. It's called Words, Sounds, Colours and Shapes, and it is sensational. I am planning a little pilgrimage of my own in a couple of weeks.
As shall we all. And you'll go there as well, I'm assuming.
Well, it sounds like I've got the tour guide that I need.
Indeed. I think we're going to have to kidnap Hannah. Right, thank you so much. The warmest of thanks. That's all the time we have for today's programme. The warmest of thanks to my studio guests, Lynne O'Donnell and Hannah Cogan. Guy Delorley on the line from Ljubljana, and Tyler Brûlé after his road trip to Lisbon. My thanks to our producer and studio engineer, Mariella Bevan. I'm Emma Nelson. Monocle on Sunday is back next week. But until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend.